going forward in this qualifier. There are two spots up for grabs this week, with the last one being for next week's qualifier number 3. So just judging by, ATR seeding, we can see in the quarterfinals, Anatan at the top of the bracket and Wham at the top of the lower half of the bracket. These people do seem the most favored. However, there are people that can certainly cause upsets. As you mentioned yourself, CSO is quite difficult to predict some of his performances. He does struggle a little bit with consistency. However, that may change in this tournament. We'll have to see. And of course, he has quite a bit of work ahead of him in needing to take down LucifroN, which will be our first match of the day here that we'll be getting into shortly. LucifroN, of course, a feared veteran in RTS in general, not just in AoE 4. Coming back from a little bit of a hiatus, I spoke to him. I remember 2 months ago, and he's definitely looking forward to at least commit quite seriously to these next few tournaments. As to whether he will stay with us after that remains to be seen, but LucifroN is committed to doing his best here, so this will not be an easy road for CSO, that's for sure.
No, I can imagine LucifroN has a lot of power to prove here. I think LucifroN, with his commitment to the next few tournaments, I'm really excited to see it, because with names like LucifroN and Vortex, they're close to home, right? Now, that means that us Europeans are a little bit biased, and we do root for our homeboys. I say Europeans like I'm not South African, but I'm almost European, guys. 9 more months and I will have a European passport, and then I can make all the European references I want. But LucifroN is a name that when I see it, I'm like, okay, this guy is going to be at a live event. But that's an instant expectation that you have from that. So he's been around since the StarCraft days. And I think with his draft he got, I don't know if CSO is going to be in some trouble. So, Myriad, are you seeing these? And how do we feel about LucifroN's draft? Because he got China Zushi. Yikes.
Yeah, getting both China and Jushi in your draft must feel pretty cozy here for LucifroN. And it's not like he had to trade out other, stronger civs for being able to grab up Byzantines as well as Delhi, Malians, 2 other really, really strong civs as well. I bet that Mongols can be a little bit more inconsistent, whereas CSO does have some pretty good picks himself, of course. I mean, he does manage to get himself the Rus, which was interestingly not picked up early here by LucifroN, which I must say is quite surprising to me. Theoretically, he could have actually taken something like China and Rus with his very first 2 picks, but instead opting for Byzantine second, which is quite interesting to me. Maybe slightly appealing to the map somewhat here, although there's great maps for Rus. As I say that, really, every map is great for Rus except water maps, if we're completely honest with ourselves here. On top of it, he has Japanese, and first big Japanese here by CSO doesn't surprise me. He's become a little bit of a... It's becoming his trademark by this point, CSO playing an extremely scary Japanese, without a doubt, showcasing a unique style in the last tournament with the Temple of Equality and the Buddhist monks, really showcasing their strength there. On top of it, House of Lancaster, always a very reliable, solid pick here, as well as something that has been historically favored by CSO as well, the Night Civs, taking them away from LucifroN, who even today is regarded by many to be just the best Knight player that you can have. JD and French are on CSO side now. An early Abbasid pick as well for him, which is a little bit surprising.
Yeah, I can definitely tell with the drafts, we can already see the play style that I expect from both of them. CSO getting all the Night Civs, which I say all of the... Yes! All of the Night Civs. And I feel that is going to speak to what he's been showing us recently. He's been showing us a lot of aggressive plays, but he also knows how to learn and sit down just like Louis and put a wall up and make sure he starves you out of your base while putting up pressure. His micro has been glorious. He's been able to do this quite well, but keeping in mind, this is a ping situation as well. We know that a lot of players struggle when they're playing from Asia and another player from Europe. It doesn't hit the same when you charge in with those knights. But yeah, I think we're ready to hop into the first game. So Myriad, let's go on in.
And here we go. with our very first match of today. We are in qualifier number 2 of the Masters of Steel tournament here. We are witnessing LucifroN returning in the color green as the Chinese, playing on Dry Arabia, up against the rising star CsO in the color teal, playing his signature civ, the Japanese here. Now, in the head-to-head between these two, we can see that LucifroN and CsO have only ever played 2 competitive series to date. The first one being in 2024, where LucifroN managed to take him out 3-1 in the Master of Realms EGC tournament. However, more recently, in the Elite Classic 3, quite famously by now, CsO did eliminate LucifroN in a tight 3-2 series in the Elite Classic 3, which definitely is seen as an upset by many people, despite LucifroN's hiatus. But difficult little start here for CsO as the Japanese, going up against what many deem to be a powerhouse civilization, myself included, in the form of the Chinese, which outside of the most expected HRE and Rus, is arguably the third most reliable and solid civilization in the game. Just an incredible economy fueled by a sharp, rapid pro scouts timing into some of the best defensive bonuses in the game. And, you know, it's not like other civs in the game where once the deer is out, the jig is up and it becomes really difficult. Not for China. It's so smooth to start going into those granaries, and with something like the astronomical clock tower and Nesta Bees, it makes defensive gameplay almost a breeze against a lot of civilizations. However, Japanese for CsO, Japanese especially, is quickly accelerating on the rise in terms of strength, and we see it prioritized more and more by the top players in drafts. Mainly because, you know, of course, there's the deer pushing to keep in mind, which CsO is going to show us here very aptly shortly, with the first spear already out on the field. Second one will follow shortly, I'm sure. Although, as I say that, there's actually remacro to Feudal Age instead. But Japanese, I think thanks to the deer, as well as the Kura Storehouse, I would say they don't even actually need the deer under the TC to be potent. The Kura Storehouse, Moreka, 12 free farms boosted by the Daimyo, that is also sure to tide over a smooth food transition.
Yeah, this is a very strange position for me to sit at as well, because I've been watching so many games these last few days, and a single spear coming out was not on my bingo card. I was like, oh, well, we're getting 3 spears, most likely. He's going to start pushing the deer. But LucifroN already was considering how many he needs to kill for that spearman to not be worth it. Now, honestly, CsO is spicy, and he's already pushed the deer so that they disappear off the minimap. And as someone who's not a pro player, this could frustrate me quite a bit, trying to see what happened to my deer and where did they all go to. And I think in a position like this, where we're now getting the deer being killed on the map, we used to be able to see, oh, my opponent is on deer in the fog of war, but now all of a sudden, the deer is most likely going to be dead. So with professional scouts most likely going to come out the one way, he's already going to be able to see exactly what the other side tries to do. We see Imperial Academy coming up and our first Imperial official being built instantly. Now, with, like you said, with the Kura Storehouse, you do have that safe food for yourself, but I would like to see if Japan is going to be a little bit more aggressive going out for food, considering they probably want to deny China from getting all these pro scouts for free. And responding to pro scouts, I guess we've been seeing a lot of horsemen here, but we'll see what CsO starts to cook. He's been very comfortable in stables, so we'll see if that's the same plan here. But with his macro already, it looks like he just wants to go castle.
Yeah, it's a slow age up here for CsO, right? Typically something like 2 or 3 on the age up is pretty indicative of a fast castle age, because although you do get the free farms from the Kura Storehouse, if you do get it up earlier, it will give you the farms slightly earlier, of course. It's not really that significant of a bonus early on. I mean, as Japanese, you're pseudo berry sieve with that Tawara upgrade, which is now coming in for CsO for that faster gathering rate on the berries. But you also, of course, have the sheep and the initial instantaneous farm that you get access to from the Kura. So it's not you're not too concerned about getting those farms as fast as possible. They will accrue over time anyway. But of course, having less villagers working on the Kura does mean that you have more villagers working during that time, which can mean which can lead to a better Castle Age timing, which is going to be on the cards here for CSO. Surprisingly, there's not going to be much contention put onto the day by him, so LucifroN, in theory, will have free reign to pick up all of the day on the map here on regions, which there are more of than on a regular map. If you're able to access more of them. In terms of more, what I mean is there's not more than on a normal, but more of them are contestable typically. On something like Dry Arabia, you do have your initial 2 berries, your initial 2 day that each side has, which normally is hard to contest, no matter how good your Civ is at pro scouting. But here in Morocco, we can see on the left side of the map, there are 4 small day packs, 3 on each, and those are up for grabs for anyone. So if ignored, they're very easy to pick up here for LucifroN, which can lead to a pretty notable surplus in great food.
Now the problem is, when you're Japanese, you love aging up, right? Getting into castle is a very healthy spot to be in, because with those mounted samurais, you have that mobility, and you're not going to mind TC diving, especially when you have that reflective shield, or deflective shield in this case. And with LucifroN going for Pro Scouts, he is letting CSO dictate that pace of the game. He's getting some Spearmen, so it is going to deal with Mounted Samurai if he so chooses to go for those. Because we've also seen a lot of people going for Onamushas instead. Because of their high mobility, they have been quite potent. Now, as China, you're not going to need to leave your base for quite a while. But LucifroN, he's not getting any gold now. So this means that when those units do arrive, he is going to struggle getting out onto the resources and getting what he needs. Luckily for him, he's China, so every production building and every building in his base will help him get to that gold number. But with the amount of spearmen he has, he's definitely aware of the risk that he has now taken. Getting a lot of food, but this could be very, very pricey.
Could be very pricey indeed. I mean, one good thing here for CSO with not contesting Pro Scout is this really, really fast castle timing, as we see at 7:15. The floating gate is dropped and rushed up with 9 villages at this point in time. So those mounted samurai, like you said, are going to hit the field most likely very, very quick. So CSO, recognizing the threat of that, still even now, spares are in production. LucifroN himself must be a little bit surprised by the lack of contention here by CSO in the feudal age. We see that he did prep that horseman already in anticipation of potentially a Yumi play here by CSO, which has seen a great amount of success recently as well. And as you mentioned, he pulled off of the gold completely, not only because access to boosted taxes from the Imperial Academy will give him a great amount of gold income anyway, but partly because of that expectation in necessity to make units to defend his scouts as they do gather up the day. He is now moving back onto the gold with 2 villagers, so will trend towards his own castle age as well. There's a decent amount of spearmen here. They will be able to defend quite well, and it is going to be the stable as the production building of choice here for CSO. So mounted samurai are going to start roaming the field quite threateningly, and LucifroN actually even going for CSO's day here. And if he manages to get these, that's a very scary amount of food for China to have.
China is already scary without getting unlimited deer in the first 15 minutes. So this is going to be a tough one if LucifroN can hold out. And when I say that, hold out, it just means those mounted samurais, they have been known to love diving under a TC. The thing is, though, with LucifroN's ability to get that gold, he's not going to have villagers in danger for too long. We do see him investing quite a bit into the scouts because he knows that this might be limited. Now, the Mounted Samurai is here to protect the relics. He wants to ensure that he picks up as many as possible because he knows that LucifroN is snacking behind this. Now, he also got himself a bannerman, so this is going to be quite nice in terms of making these horses just that much better. But they are still stuck in the base, and honestly, that is probably best case scenario for LucifroN. He wanted to keep those horses in the base because he doesn't want them to get here. The moment they do, this is where things get a lot harder. So honestly, I feel like CSO had a timing that he could have maybe done some damage, but he's been needed to keep these guys at base. So we'll see if LucifroN can actually capitalize on this significantly, but honestly, it looks like he will.
Yes, I do think that CSO did misread the situation a little bit here. I mean, China is just able to produce so many of these spearmen with access to that day, as well as the supervision from the Imperial official. And CSO, the issue here is that because you've given over all this free DA, LucifroN is perfectly content to just keep producing Spearmen. We see the count already up to 18. There's essentially no angles here for CSO to play whatsoever. And of course, China has access to that Barbican whenever they desire for that Song Dynasty. Not only will it provide extra production rate for the villagers, also a great amount of vision alongside the Imperial Palace, which he has now completed and himself got into the castle age as well. But on top of it, it's a great defensive building as well, not only as a garrison spot for the villagers that may be in danger, but also with the hand cannon slits that China has access to on their TC, the towers, as well as the Barbican. They are excellent against armored units like these mounted samurai. However, CSO has a different plan, which is that honor brigade switch that he did quite expertly up against B, but it gets spotted early by the horseman, Marika.
Yeah, seeing this just ensures that LucifroN will get ready for it. Because with Honor Geisha, you do need to be ready. And you do need to make units to actually handle them. Because you just running your spears into them will not leave you with the greatest of times. So getting that switch and that information is going to help him significantly. Another one, look at that poor boy. He's a little bit damaged, but he does have the ability to make it home. Now, CSO is trying to be active, and he does keep a lot of what LucifroN's army is quite busy. So the horsemen, though, they will be able to run around, have a good time, but these guys are going to pick them off pretty quickly if they're out of position. On Geisha, though, these guys are moving straight to the base, and it looks like that Barbican is in a very compromising spot, but the spearmen were not completely ready, so a villager does go down. The first villager kill of the day.
Nice little bait there by CSO, drawing away the majority of the spearmen with that Uma Bannerman in order to expose the villagers building the Barbican of the Sun. Does net himself one villager kill, however, that's only a drop in the pond of necessary damage that's needed here for CSO, because the amount of day under that mill safely tucked at the back of LucifroN's base is going to take so long to run out, and it's already manifested. Such a scary army count here for LucifroN. Now, LucifroN does seem a bit reticent to really commit to a secondary reliable unit in his composition. We see, of course, the spearmen that we mentioned earlier, as well as just a few horsemen here to gain some traction on the map by denying the relics, as well as keeping CSO on his toes. But the real question is what he will deem as the secondary unit of choice here. Typically, Zhuge Nu is a great option now that he has access to it with the Song Dynasty unlocked by the Barbican. They will do fantastic work up against the Honor Geisha as long as they don't get surrounded. But, of course, they will not do that well up against the Mounted Samurai, so this composition demands a bit more of a nuanced combination of units here from LucifroN, which he will look to go into shortly, I'm sure, as the mass is starting to build quite noticeably here for CSO. Of course, as we mentioned, there's still plenty of food for him. He has access to the sheep as well as the Kura storehouse, and is now making a play onto the right side of the map, berries as well. Regions, of course, this is what the map is known for. The resources are split, very sectioned on the map. We have the day on the left, the gold and stone in the center, as well as the berries on the right, and that berries there, the 7 actually berry packs there for CSO. For a pseudo berry sieve like the Japanese with the extra gathering rate, this is a jackpot in terms of food and could even out the tide in terms of the day that LucifroN has access to.
Now, my big question is, I was going to say to you, Myriad, what is he going to do about these Honor Geishas? And you talked about the Zhuge Nu, but he was listening. He's like, okay, yeah, I do need these bad boys. So getting a bunch of Zhuge Nu is definitely going to help him, but it does feel like there was also a timing here for CSO, that he might be able to take a pretty good fight. But LucifroN, he looks like the kind of guy who can bait out someone that when he's not ready to take this on yet. And CSO does not spot the monk. The sneaky LucifroN monk will make it out alive. Now, with these horsemen, he's going to be able to find some damage. Let me put that on our picture-in-picture so we can track what these bad boys are going to be doing and get back here to the front of the base. Because, honestly, these units here, they could be doing a lot of damage as well.
Exactly, and with these Zuganu down the field for LucifroN, the defense is going to be made much easier. As we see here, the picture-in-picture, LucifroN raiding with the Horseman at the same time, getting a little bit of reinforcement pickoffs here from CSL, taking out some of the Honor Brigatias, which of course are very scary on mass against Horsemen. However, in isolation, they can be easy pickings for them. As LucifroN runs around the map with the mass. Palace Guard is going to be the next unit of choice here for LucifroN, which will serve as a great bulky frontline up against those Honor Brigatia. And I feel like as long as LucifroN continues producing Palace Guards or Knights, armored units, of course, do very, very well up against the Honor Brigatia because they attack very quickly and from a good range for a melee unit, but their damage is not that high in turn, mainly relying on their attack speed to output damage, and of course, while also producing a Zuganu. The defense should be pretty straightforward here, and it will become a question of how exactly do these players follow up going into this mid-game.
Now, we can see that CSO wanted to get some work done into this mid-game as well, and he did. He has his Honor Brigatia here just to ensure that he gets the food up too, but I want to point out to you guys, these boys are getting a little low on meat, and there is no sign of LucifroN wanting to slow down with that production. 4 horsemen in queue. There's a lot of wood, so he's ready to start the farm transition, but it will slow down this mass that he's worked on. You can now see he's going to lose a lot of villagers here because there is no reaction. There's too many alarms going off. And that is the beauty of playing against someone like CSO. You can see there are blue dots all around the map, and LucifroN needs to focus on every single side. So with every ping going off, there's no wonder that we have a slaughterhouse over here.
Yeah, that's a big raid there by CSO. LucifroN a bit too distracted at that point in time. Quite surprising for a player with his APM at this point in time, but it just goes to show when so many things are happening on the map, you can't, even at the highest level, keep up with everything. It's just not really humanly possible, so cracks will begin to show as showcased here by CSO, taking out now up to 7 villages on his side. And although LucifroN is still ahead, courtesy of that Song dynasty and the Imperial officials, that gap is starting to close, and the more this goes on, the more CSO chips away. Eventually, the mass will be so severely in his favor that LucifroN won't be able to do too much to contest it, and this is particularly scary here for LucifroN. Here, they are very slow and effective up against the Honor Brigatia, but in an open field like this, it can be very scary, as LucifroN finds himself maybe slightly extended here. There are still Honor Brigatia towards the left side as well, as they close in, kiting in towards the mass of Zuganu here. Spears as well, locking onto the Mounted Samurai to deny them. It does seem like LucifroN will be able to kite back just in time, but the surround from the Brigatia does come through, and they're right through onto the Zuganu, so many of them falling down to the swirling Naginata from the Honor Brigatia, and now retreating desperately LucifroN as more and more Honor Brigatia are swarming in towards his base, and you can see the military mass. Suddenly LucifroN finding himself in a lot of danger.
Yeah, this looks like a very tough spot for LucifroN to crawl out of, because just like we mentioned earlier, I was mentioning that earlier, but look at these beautiful samurai still raiding. He wants to get that farm transition going, but these types of raids from CSO, and that's what I said, you give this man a horse and he's gonna make the game a good one. These guys are just sliding in and out, and it just doesn't feel like LucifroN can keep up, because that is again a very mobile mass that you're trying to play against. And the Barbican of the Sun now protecting those initial berries. He's going to be struggling with them on the next one, because the Barbican is not going to be able to keep them all alive. And even though LucifroN is in a pretty good spot with regards to villager numbers, his mass is going to slow down completely now. We can now switch over back here to food per minute as well. We can see those numbers very different.
Yeah, it's looking a little bit scary at this point in time, especially with this farm transition that is now starting for LucifroN, and this is what you could call the weak point of China. Once that day is out, despite LucifroN getting so much, once it is finished and this farm transition has to start, although it's decently smooth for China, it's much easier for something like Japanese, and with the map control that CSO now finds himself having, and access to those berries, he can just keep pumping and pumping. 57 on the Brigatia, 16 mounted samurais and more in queue. Now samurai starting to come out to pad that front line even further here for CSO. LucifroN with his army mass taking that bad fight earlier, just baited so expertly by CsO to overextend. Really, really in trouble now as he's just locked tight in his base, not even really able to stand by that Barbican. A CsO raiding, finding another great raid earlier there with the Mounted Samurai, up to 16 worker kills now. You wouldn't even think that LucifroN has Song, because he's only 3 or 4 ahead. Those could, you'd be perfectly justified in thinking that those are the Imperial officials, but no. CsO has just killed that many already, and this mass, Marek, is looking so scary from CsO.
There's absolutely nothing in LucifroN's army that is going to allow him to deal with these, because as we can see, 7 Spearmen is no match for 20 Mounted Samurais and 6 Geishas, of course, but these things could even be negligible. With 20 Mounted Samurais, you are already going to struggle. We can see the Jugunus trying to fire, but barely doing any damage to these, because they do have their upgrades. +2 range defense is going to make sure that these guys barely take damage. We see them at the back. They do semi-get cleaned up, but this looks like a stomp. LucifroN is now completely under siege, completely overwhelmed. But honestly, at the end of this, it does feel like LucifroN will take this and say, okay, I got rid of Japan. I'm not going to see this on any water maps, right?
So yes, it's a heavy price to pay, I think, for sure here for LucifroN. He does get rid of what is CsO's potentially best civ by now, as he has proven time and time again. But giving up China for it, it's a tough pill to swallow, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly the thing that I was thinking about. Is you got rid of Japan, yes, but you just gave up China. So in a situation where you get rid of Japan, but you lose a different civilization that is not China, I don't think a lot of people would be too discouraged by that. But LucifroN is what I would say tilt-proof as far as pro players go. I have seen this man come back from the depths of despair. So guys, let's go into the lobby and see exactly what is next. So, Ayyubids versus Abbasid. Are we just getting sister civilizations in front of us today?
It looks to be the case here, as Ayyubids and Abbasid are the choices here on Kawasan today. Looking at the draft, it makes sense somewhat, right? I mean, for CsO especially, there's not really many other potent choices here for him. Something like OTD can do okay, I think, but they struggle a little bit with tempo, I would say. French and JD have seen a bit of a surgence on water maps especially, but when it comes down to testing the strength of naval economies in direct water fighting, as can be the case on Kawasan, they can often fall a little bit short. As for LucifroN, of course, he does have that Jushi option available, but there is some nuance to playing it on a map like Kawasan. We have seen players like Anatan, Scatterbrain, and of course, Eliona attempt to do in the last series as well. It's not very easy to play, even if you do get that center meditation gardens. On top of that, we have that access to, of course, Mongo as well. Can be a very potent pick here, but not against something like Abbasid, which CsO has access to, as well as Delhi historically has been a pretty capable civilization here on Kawasan as well. But instead, he's going to opt for the Ayyubids, and Ayyubid against Abbasid. This is not a very common matchup anymore here on Kawasan, so I'm quite curious to see how it will go. It should be quite similar to how you'd expect something like Jushi and China to go. Just like Jushi is a sort of more aggressive, slightly tempo-orientated version of China, so is Ayyubid to the old school Abbasid.
Yeah, and we're gonna see what the situation looks like on the map, because guys, we're gonna go on in. So, guys, let's see what the game holds, Myriad. Thrall.
We are in game number 2 here, in the Masters of Steel qualifier number 2. We're witnessing once again LucifroN in the color green playing the Ayyubids on Kawasan, facing Team Elephants. CsO in the red Abbasid. Sister civilizations, as you mentioned yourself, Whamen, meeting here in conflict on Kawasan. And I'm particularly interested to see the openings here for either place. Typically Ayyubid, quite similarly to something like Jushi, it's not uncommon for them to skip a dock entirely in the initial dark phase, instead opting for something like an advancement wing, potentially for a fast age up, or as we have seen recently, hinted at and showcased by the Canadian brothers, especially potentially an industry wing as well for that boost in wood as well as building speed that the Iobits can get thanks to the industry wing. However, LucifroN opening somewhat standard here. We do see a dock drop for him. Sometimes Abbasid can also go Dark Age docking entirely in favor for that military wing in order to. Historically, we have seen fast ram plays as well as harassment plays on the gold, followed by galley timings or Dow timings in this case, in order to deny the opponent's fishing. But it's a bit of a different dynamic in this situation here. And it does seem like Abbasid is actually LucifroN's favorite pick on this map. It must be something that he's quite comfortable with. Probably from the earlier days. He might not have gotten as much time to practice recently to try out something new. But it might also be something that he just deems really, really strong. I have no doubt that he's been practicing with his good brother, of course, Vortex, in preparation for this. There's going to be two fishing ships so far for him here. Oh, actually, no, excuse me. It's actually LucifroN on the Iobits and CsOH on the Abbasid. Oh, what a silly mistake. Let's just pretend that never happened, eh? As LucifroN is, yeah. So LucifroN actually does opt the dock here, and it's CsOH as the Abbasid opting for the military wing edge up. A bit of a reversal we'd expect from these civs.
Now, when I see a military wing coming on out from Abbasid, I think standard water aggression, because it just feels like that early pressure they get from their units just puts them so far ahead in terms of shutting you down. Now, with them getting that first dock, or all of their docks for cheaper, it does make it a lot more viable. And what I like here is LucifroN knows this. He knows that, hey, the military wing is very, very possible. And getting that second dock is going to mean the difference between losing your water and actually standing a chance at keeping this very much alive. Now, he does go for industry. And we have seen that Aeobids goes for economic in the early game instead of industry. What do you think is the difference between these two in the playstyle that follows?
Well, it's always great having access to 3 extra villages from an age up, thanks to the growthing, right? That's never a bad choice. However, the additional bonus that you get from the growth being that berry gather rate, although it can have use on this map later in that mid-game, especially when it comes to contending the center. Early on, the 3 villages take a while to pay off, especially with how timing and tempo orientated a map is like this in terms of fishing ship, as well as those initial early units from the military wing for CsOH's Abbasids. There's really a lot more to be gained from the industry on this map specifically. You get a good chunk of wood coming in from the industry wing, which can really help offset any of that timing deficit that you may find yourself at against an early age up, as we see CsOH going for here on the Abbasids. Whereas on top of it now, after the recent change, you get an additional building speed as well on your buildings as Iobits, which, you know, is something that's normally reserved to China and Jushi, but now LucifroN as the Iobits also has access to. So if you go for any counter docking or a bit of quick docking as necessary to defend on a pond, that becomes much, much easier.
And with this military wing, he actually does not go for any RAM plays. He goes straight for the economy. And this is something, again, we don't often see that much because, you know, you're used to getting all of these attacks on your water, but not used to that land aggression. And it shows because LucifroN has not noticed yet. CsOH has kept him busy on water, and it means that he does not even realize that there is a raid happening on the map. He does realize now, and 2 villages will go down. Nonetheless, a massive, massive loss for him, but he does retain the water for now.
Yes, once again, LucifroN finding himself at a slight bit of an attention deficit here in this game, being forced to fight on water and so focused on that micromanagement that he does not notice dropping 2 villages to what is essentially just 1 archer initially there on his gold. A big and painful loss so early on here for LucifroN, one that is definitely bound to sting a little bit. We'll have to see how it affects him going forward here. It does seem like the initial trade, I believe, did favor him on water there in the south pond at least, but this northern pond is also up for contention now. Yeah, so it does seem like LucifroN essentially this pond on lockdown with his initial trades, which is very good for him. But he does manage to get a dock up on that northern pond as well. Now has his Dow out. And CSO is forced to respond. He does have a fishing ship here. Quite greedy of him so early, thinking he'd have a free pond here, but is late to spot that dock from LucifroN with his military unit. So a big win there for LucifroN, and he's actually in a completely even spot here to contest this northern pond whilst having full access to the southern one.
Now we can see that LucifroN is aware of how important this water is, so just getting another dock up here will be massive for him, and the demo ship makes a beautiful connection. 26 HP left on this bad boy, but he should be able to make it home safely to the dock to ensure that he gets healed back up. The villager now trying to build as quickly as possible, and LucifroN already losing 3 villagers, does not want to lose another one, but the dock does go up, so the villager also staying alive.
Yes, LucifroN does manage to get that dock up, which is a big win here on this pond. And he did get that demo connection on the Springle ship, which is nice. However, he was not able to just shoot it enough times with the Dow in order to finish it off. So finding himself slightly behind here on this northern pond. Of course, it's not too bad for him. He does still have tempo thanks to the food on that southern pond, where he is now starting to add more fishing ships, I'm sure. However, actually, most of the wood is instead spent on the northern pond, so LucifroN is determined to get 2 ponds at this point in time. We see only 1 fishing ship in queue, now a second one being added as well. But Dow and Springle ship in production here for LucifroN, and if LucifroN is able to prevent that second dock from going up there for CSO, he should be in a decent spot in that northern pond, as long as he doesn't take too much damage from this tri-ship combination here from CSO. Dow, Springle ship, and Demolition ship is up for CSO. So, and now secondary Springle ship up for him as well. So LucifroN has to be very careful here to not get denied if he wants to keep contesting this. The Demolition ship is coming in. The Dow is trying desperately to, but it not quite hit, and it does fall. Springle ship, Demolition ship now has free reign to go directly towards the Springle ship, which does go down. And LucifroN again loses both ships on this northern pond. He does have the Demolition ship ready. Will it be enough to make a connection? I don't believe so, as the Springle ships can turn around. He detonates it early actually, but still way out of range. Enough to clip the Springle ship and take it down.
Now, it does look like LucifroN takes this as a, okay, I'll give you the water, it's fine, let me just ensure I get my economy going on this side. The thing is now, he is up against a ram. And yes, this ram, it's annoying, but luckily it's slow on the other side of the map, so he's going to need a while to get here too. LucifroN making sure that he keeps the water by adding 2 more docks, so even if the ram does cause some problems, he's not going to cause enough to take down everything. But we have to ask ourselves, what is next? And with LucifroN having 18 on wood, I'm asking myself, is this also to considering food? Is this considering production buildings? And it looks to be getting an outpost here is definitely going to help him get to that castle age that I think is going to be crucial to actually establish themselves. Because now we've gotten to a point in the game where we're not really sure what's next. And Desert Raiders apparently is the answer. But he could pump out quite a lot with what he's got here on the water. And the food under the TC, not in the greatest spot, but he hasn't even touched his berries. So having a few leftover sheep does definitely help in that regard.
LucifroN decided to forgo any kind of further investment on that northern pond after those initial unfortunate trades. So he's going to be somewhat content here, just getting the fishing ships he needs on that first pond. As you mentioned, adding further docks, not only to offset any kind of ram further follow-up here from CSO, as I think the ram is now moving towards that southern pond. On top of it, the gathering on the fishing ships from the deep sea fish will be a bit more efficient as well, with less distance to sail across for them. And with this tower and so many villages on gold here for LucifroN, is going to be a Castle Age follow-up after those initial Desert Raider investments here for LucifroN. And I'm wondering, especially what we're going to see in the Castle Age here from LucifroN, because I do remember a game between him and Anatan in this very exact same matchup here in Qualifier number 1, where LucifroN did get knocked out by Anatan, where he was as the Abbasids against Anatan's Arabids and really fell prey to the mass cavalry Desert Raider Camel Lancer composition. here from Ayubid's. So I wonder if he's looking to sort of take a page from Anatan book in that regard, which does seem to be the case with this early Desert Raider investment here and now macroing towards that castle age. But CSO does actually beat him to the punch regarding that. But these Desert Raiders being quite expensive, slowing LucifroN down somewhat here as the Culture Wing is on the way for CSO.
Now the Culture Wing, luckily for LucifroN, takes always more than a minute and a half to get here. And him getting advancement as well, he's going to be able to match that pretty quickly. And this is quite critical, because if your opponent is going to be in castle and already making those units that you're going to struggle handling, it definitely puts them on equal footing. And we see the idea of Camel Lances coming in, but we know that Abbasid doesn't mind playing against Camel Lances with what they've got in store. I was about to go in on that, but then I see he's added another archery range. He's like, no, I actually have a different idea. We are not going to be going any other direction. Oh, never mind. The stable added to. He's getting a diverse set of units coming on in. Now, Culture Wing is going to hit a little bit earlier, and we'll see what he does with this, but it opens up so many opportunities here, right? He's got no blacksmith upgrades yet, but getting into that advancement way, or getting into preservation of knowledge, is definitely going to help him stay ahead with even less resources.
It definitely will help, especially in combination with the earlier castle timing here for CSO. And as you correctly mentioned, Marika, typically, I mean, Ayubid is really known for the Camel Cavalry play. The Desert Raider in combination with Camel Lancers can work wonders for them in a lot of matchup, and it's a very difficult composition to deal with for a lot of civilizations. However, Abbasid is really well equipped to deal with them, as their camels are in fact superior in almost every way. The Camel Riders deal really well with the Camel Lancers, and of course the Camel Archers are going to do great work up against the Desert Raiders as well as a counter unit. So if it comes to camel on camel action, LucifroN might find himself in a pretty difficult spot here, especially having what essentially being forced somewhat, I think, to go for the advancement wing here, seeing that CSO is aging already. And although it does get you that earlier age up, the trouble is, of course, that if you do get the earlier age up, but at what cost? And the cost really is the fact that you get no other bonus whatsoever from age up.
Investing a little bit of less resources definitely feels nice, and getting there as quickly as your opponent, but it does start to stack up when you think about all the other bonuses that you forwent, I guess? Forgo in that scenario. Now, with the amount of horsemen here, it doesn't feel like LucifroN is going to be aware of this Camel Rider switch that is coming in, but it's to be expected, right? So the Lancers will get their charge off. They will how can we say this one? Well, they'll give them some unease, ensuring that these boys hit a lot softer than the others. But they've got reinforcements on the way, and the Camel Rider is here to support his friends and fight back against them too. We see the Veteran Horseman upgrade coming in now as well. So with the amount of Camel Lancers, you still have to be careful, but it's going to start getting a lot less scary for him. Now the question is just, who gets to take all the relics? Because LucifroN is already one ahead.
LucifroN should have some advantage here in terms of relics. The Dervish is, of course, way faster than a regular monk, also able to heal themselves passively at a slow rate while on the move without even needing to stop. CSO did have that first age up, of course, so it's not too bad for him regarding that, but it does seem to be quite the mixed composition coming in from CSO, just like you mentioned, Marika. Camel Riders, definitely a prudent choice here from him, will do great up against both the Desert Raiders and the Camel Lancers, and also Archers as well as Crossbowmen being added for him. And now we see LucifroN moves in onto the wood line to deal damage. However, there is a wraparound coming in from pinches. Yeah, the Camel Lancers are pinched here by CSO from the back. Most of them do end up falling, and the Horsemen very well move onto the Desert Raiders, dealing bonus damage to them as they do count for range units with great damage. And that was such an unfortunate trade there for LucifroN.
Now, LucifroN sacrificed a lot of resources here to take that fight, and honestly, it did look like it was going to go pretty well for him, but it turned around quickly as the Camel Rider numbers just got more and more impressive. Now, we do see another relic being picked up from LucifroN, and there's a few more that should be up for grabs for him. if he does make his way through here. But I feel like CsO definitely solidified himself a nice area with those walls. Very aggressive walls, as far as I've seen CsO wall, ensuring that he does get a little bit more of the map. And you can see it's like a natural split between these two now. And LucifroN trying to do what CsO did to him. Raid in more than one place and try to split up that army. Now, I don't know with the numbers if this is going to be as successful, and CsO smells it as well.
Yeah, raiding is definitely what LucifroN needs here in this case, is the Iobids, but they're very capable of civilization, and a lot they do simply just get somewhat outscaled by the Abbasid in a regular macro game. Abbasid just has so many more economic bonuses going for them. They also just have, frankly, just a superior head-on army as well when the numbers get higher and higher. But the Iobids do have that additional mobility. Their camo units are more affordable than the Abbasids and are more adept at raiding as well, especially thanks to the camo lancers long distance charge, as well as his increased vision to other compared to other units in the game. So LucifroN is definitely playing correctly to his civilization strengths here, but the question is whether he can get enough damage to offset the scaling that CsO is putting up now, as we see behind this CsO feeling comfortable enough to even add a second town center as well to start further boosting his economy even further. And the more this goes, the better it will go for him. A lot of gold in the bank for him as well, so he's going to start just churning out upgrades left, right, and center. Great to see preservation of knowledge as well. And LucifroN, it is going to be a switch into archers, as he's going to commit now a Camo Lancer archer composition. Archers don't do too badly up against Camo Riders, but they're not exactly the best unit against them. That would be Spears, of course, but Spears, you know, against the Abbasid, when they have access to composite bows, it would be a tough choice. So LucifroN's going to play very classic Iobids here, and we'll see how well it works out for him. If he can get the raids going and really dish out some damage here on CsO, it could prove to be a very effective choice, but the numbers from CsO are also building steadily, and his composition is also looking very capable.
Now, this is a pretty scary army. Doesn't matter which side you look at it. But I feel like the crossbow composition here is going to be crucial for CsO. As long as he can just micro those a tiny bit, he should be able to take this pretty easily. But he needs to be careful not to let these guys get caught out alone. The archers doing a little bit of damage to these riders. Takes one down. They are still going to need to be very careful. We have a Lancer in the mix as well here. And between all of this, it just feels like CsO's army is going to be able to trade a little bit better because of the natural counters that they've set aside. But LucifroN is trying to raid at the same time, get a little bit of damage on his enemy, just like CsO did to him earlier. But the archer's trying to get a few cheap shots, but they have to be careful because if the Lancer connects like that, it is going to be critical.
The good news here for LucifroN is that he does have an upgrade disadvantage, which will only be further exacerbated by Undermesh level 2 coming in for him shortly in just under 10 seconds at this point in time, as well as a keep drop attempt on the center of the map. If he can secure himself all these berries in the center, he's definitely going to be in a pretty good position as CsO forgoes some map control for that additional scaling from the town center. Now, just like you mentioned, CsO's composition should theoretically be superior here. As we mentioned, the Camo Riders do win out 1 against 1 up against those Camo Lancers from LucifroN. The Archer backline from LucifroN will do pretty decently up against the Camo Riders. However, crossbows will further aid the Camo Riders melting that front line from LucifroN faster. But LucifroN has different plans. As siege is on the way, and with the keep, you can use that as a safe backdrop to retreat and just siege from a relatively safe distance, poking in and out with these fights. And LucifroN understands, actually. He knows this timing. He has both of his ranged upgrades. His army is kind of now as strong as it would be in comparison, at least for a little while. And he's going to look to go for a timing. Try to see if CsO was going onto those berries there just to the south of the pond, but he gets pushed away now by LucifroN. And with the Manjanique on the field, he could look to put even more pressure, as a second one is now being built in the field by him as well.
CsO getting that second TC to the front definitely helped get him at least on level with LucifroN. We see that LucifroN and CsO being dead set in villages right now. This is not a TC that is paying off as much as you'd want it to, because now with Manganiques, it gets sieged down pretty quickly, and LucifroN has the same idea with these camels, trying to get the arrows to, or everyone to fire at them, but turning into mangonels, ensuring that they get a pretty good shot off. We'll see they get another amazing shot off on the crossbowman, and that is disgusting if you think about the damage here. We see the army value falling now for CSO, but this is not over. This is definitely still very, very winnable for CSO. You see that micro coming through, but the problem is LucifroN's mangonels are untouched, and he's target firing everything that can actually shut him down.
The Mangonels are definitely doing great work here, working on CSO's crossbow backline, doing a lot of damage. However, the numbers are dwindling pretty quickly here for LucifroN. As we mentioned, his frontline is failing so quickly, courtesy of those crossbows, as well as the camel riders, and even the lancers are stronger in a direct melee fight than the camel lancers, as long as there's no charging. So the camel lancers, although a great raiding unit, they definitely suffer in direct engagements like this compared to regular knights, and it does seem to be a bit of a stalemate at the end of the day here, at the end of this fight here for them, which, I mean, isn't too bad for LucifroN, because he does have that keep that he can fall back on, so it's not like he's gonna get pushed up back against his base anytime soon here, at least until CSO starts getting some trebuchets out on the field. But the bank for CSO is quite impressive by this point in time. So much gold and wood in the bank for him. He's able to remass quite quickly, as well as maybe potentially play for his own siege with so many resources in the bank if he chooses. And we see armored hulls coming in for him as well, so he's going to actually contend this side with the fishing, with the military. Could, as at least that northern berry patch is in range of the ship, so that's kind of off limits there for LucifroN somewhat. And LucifroN, yeah, I think this is the right choice. He's going to look to try to take down this fishing entirely, which is definitely what you want to do once you get mid-map here on Kawasan, because if your opponent can't stop you, why not deny most of his food economy?
The thing is, he's preparing for this. CSO is getting a keep in his base. He's starting to get the farms. We see a trebuchet too. Starting to think about that slow siege that we see from people. But now investing those little bit of resources into something like a trebuchet is going to force LucifroN to make something a little bit more effective in terms of dealing with an army. We do see behind this economy wing being chosen. So now CSO is going to be joining the ranks of Imperial. And this is going to be hard for CSO to hold, at least for a little while, if LucifroN decides to keep spending all of his resources. And honestly, with the numbers that we're seeing here, it does look to be the case. He is just spending every bit he's got.
Exactly. The economic wing on the way for CSO is going to be quite significant for him here. I must say, it is a little bit greedy for him here, especially with another push coming in from LucifroN at this point in time. 2 additional manganique field. We could potentially see the incendiary borders being brought out for him as well to aid in the siege. There is a keep up for CSO, which is definitely going to aid the defense. 2 trebuchets as well, so he was looking to try to siege down that keep, which definitely an ambitious choice, considering he also wanted to age up at the same time. It's a bit of a interesting commitment trying to go for both here, but instead he backs up a bit and just plays for that age up. And when these upgrades do come through for him, it would be really, really nice. But the army deficit is building quite considerably, so even though he might get the elite upgrades, he's lacking the gold for both of them at this point in time. The army is definitely in favor of LucifroN, so it might be to an extent that even though CSO does get his elite upgrades, he might not have the numbers for it to matter.
The problem is him getting elite upgrades is going to matter. The problem is he doesn't have the gold for it. He's going to get 1 elite upgrade, and the rest of it is going to take a little bit longer. He does have enough on gold over here, and if we switch over to the income per minute, we can see he's going to be able to queue this up pretty quickly, but there's still that timing now for LucifroN. And LucifroN actually decides to not over make. He's going to go Imperial himself. Now this is happening all while the water is cooking. He's putting a little bit of pressure down. He's trying to get these camels to do some work as well. Manganiques walking around. They need to be careful, because if these get picked off, or if a mangonel gets a deadly shot off, this could turn the tides pretty quickly, because these are very squishy units. He targets the farms because he knows those were not cheap, because this was way before the eco wing came in.
Yeah, definitely not cheap, especially here on the front line. They are next to the keep, so that, initially that safe, but no long. Doesn't really take his foot off the pedal, even going so far as to dive the keep here quite aggressively, which I must say is a little bit excessively bold. I mean, sure, CSO does have that Imperial Age in, so he must feel a bit of pressure, but the Maginiques, they get completely abandoned Moreka as they fall instantaneously to the cavalry from CSO and the Lancer upgrade. Elite Lancers now on the field here for CSO, and the crossbow numbers aren't quite up to par here for LucifroN. We see 23 Lancers on the field and 9 more in queue. That is solely the only unit CSO is making at this point in time. He's become somewhat known for his cavalry. Take the title of Night King here from LucifroN in game number. As he pushes ever forward, the keep will slow him down somewhat, but with how tanky and capable these Lancers are, I'm not sure it's enough to stop him.
Yeah, these Lancers are running right past the keep, and yes, some of them will fall, but this is a mass archer ball, and it's not a ball that any elite unit is afraid of. We do see that a keep got denied there on the top gold, and some villagers did go down, a lot of villager kills overall. But this feels pretty scary, because now, remember those trebuchets we looked at a little bit earlier? They are actually mattering, and it felt like LucifroN was going to go Imperial, and he just took a fight as he had that idea. And the problem is now that indecisiveness that he had for a moment, I think just threw the game completely. Now, we do see the ships getting shut down, but honestly, CSO probably doesn't mind.
It doesn't really mind because the reality is CSO at this point can just keep massing and churning troops in towards LucifroN's base, who now has his back against the wall. And like you said, he was looking for that Imperial timing behind this to match CSO's, but the fight went way worse than he had anticipated. Even the keep is now under threat. Triple trebuchet working down, the villagers desperately looking to repair, but it's too little, too late for LucifroN in game number 2. The keep will undoubtedly fall in under a minute at this rate, and the last keep coming. Even Horseman Switch now coming through for CSO upon seeing the reinvestment into crossbows here for LucifroN. And once the elite tech for the Horseman array, which I'm not sure is in just yet, we'll have to check. Biology now on the way for him as well. That should kind of be the nail in the coffin, and is really struggling.
LucifroN definitely knows that he may have overcommitted a little bit at the front and pulls back, trying to get the units together, and not like the rest of us gold people who just rally our army into our opponent's base. He did try and make a little bit of a play here for the water too, and he does shut it down, but LucifroN realizes this is not going to be the game that he takes down CSO. Calls it.
Calls it indeed, as game number 2 does go in the favor for CSO. Yet again in this series, 2-0 up, leading CSO is up against LucifroN, who many players might have pinned as the favored one in this matchup, despite his hiatus. But CSO, once again, looking to take out another veteran in his pro career at this stage. He took out LucifroN 3-2 stage of the Elite Classic 3 last time, and is now going to look to take him out in Qualifier 2 of Masters of Steel. As LucifroN, 2 games down, none to his name, he needs to make quite a grand comeback in this series if he is to proceed.
Oh, for sure. And this is not going to be an easy one at that either. Now, guys, before we continue, I'm aware that we had a little... Oh, wait, I realize every single time I use the stinger, I realize there's a little delay. So we're going to quickly reconnect on Discord, because I can hear that Discord server has decided to cut out voices, to cut out streams properly. So Myriad, I need us to drop out of Discord. Everyone who is in this Discord channel, I need you to quit right now, and then we'll hop right back in a moment. So we just can reset the server. So see you in a second, Myriad. Okay. And now should work. Let's see if the beautiful Myriad voice is coming in strong. And let me just quickly share my screen with him, and I hear all the noises. That means our boys are back, guys, and they should be hearing it all. Let's test. Twitch chat, if you guys are hearing anything that you shouldn't be hearing, aka a lag or anything like that, please let me know so we can fix it. Now, we do have our next map already, though. we have Byzantines versus JD. Where do we land, Mr. Myriad?
Interesting matchup on an interesting map, right? I see Byzantines being quite favored on this map somewhat, which I must say confuses me a little bit because the map is so open and so difficult to defend, which is tough for a civilization like the Byzantines. There can be a chance that you have some back safe berries behind your base, but really with the small wood lines against a civilization, against an overly aggressive civilization like JD, can often be even more so than French in a lot of cases. That can still be so scary here for LucifroN. On top of it, there's so many deer as well on the map, which are Byzantines can't really hope to ever fully contest up against those royal French knights that are going to be coming out from JD. So most of the day is likely going to go right under CsOH's safe defendable TC in this game. And I mean, if Byzantines is able to tide over, into a good, effective olive grove transition and getting up those either javelin or longbow numbers, the limitane as well as crossbows, they can find themselves in a pretty good spot. But surviving is going to be difficult on this kind of a map.
Now, that was something I was a little concerned with as well, because I feel like on a civilization like JD or French, you definitely have the tools to shut down Byzantines trying to be greedy, right? So this map does allow for that, and we've seen what CsOH can do on knights. And I feel that LucifroN is going to need to play very safe, and at the same time, CsOH loves a person who plays safe because that just means he gets to dictate the pace of the game. But guys, we are about to head in. We are 5 seconds out, so let's hop on in. So ladies and gentlemen, we are going live with Game 3, and
here we go. Jumping into game number 3 in Masters of Steel Qualifier number 2. LucifroN once again in the color green, playing as the Byzantines here on Bold Lands. Up against Team Elephant's CsOH in the color red, playing Jeanne d'Arc. As mentioned, we are on Bold Lands here. Quite an open map with a lot of deer up for grabs, which certainly favors a civilization that does tend to go for those pro scouts like Jeanne d'Arc tends to do. Byzantines, the other side of the coin to some extent, very defensive, very macro-orientated civilization, can be very strong in defensive circumstances. They have many defensive bonuses enabling that, as well as a powerhouse economy once those systems do come online. However, defending on a map like this is going to prove very, very difficult here for LucifroN. So if he can tide over the initial aggression, as well as potentially a Bloodlines timing from CsOH, he could be in a pretty good position after that, but I think it will be very difficult to do so. So he definitely is not going to be easy to make the comeback necessary in this series, for sure.
Now, both of these players definitely not someone or people who would be discouraged by early gameplay though, but CsOH has opted for some spearmen, and JD with a spearman opening is a fun twist I did not imagine unless we're seeing a tower rush from JD as well. And honestly, I don't subscribe to that kind of gameplay. That sounds on par with English villager rush on how dirty it is, but it definitely works on a map, especially when your goals are so far forward. So Myriad, how can LucifroN respond to this? Is this just something where you poo your villagers, you get them on the gold, get as much gold as you need for your upgrades, and then push it back after? Or what would you say?
This is something that's becoming a bit of a trend up against Byzantines, I have to say, and I think rightfully so from Moses, because Byzantines has developed a bit of a reputation as a rolling ball of a civ that's kind of going somewhat going up a cliff, and then once it reaches the peak, it just rolls down at a tremendous pace. The economy is very, very slow to get going, but once it gets going, it's incredibly potent. So if you're able to put a stopper to that wind-up in the Dark Age, perhaps with some spear aggression, as we see here from CsOH, as well as even maybe a tower on the berries that has become very, very popular as well, it can really, really be a thorn in the Byzantine side, because although you might still be able to go onto separate berries, the gather rate is so much slower, not only because of the distance you have to go to get there, But of course, the olive oil will come in much, much slower than it would from the boosted berries under the Grand Winery. So getting those mercs out for the defense will be even harder. So LucifroN does seem to have managed to get enough gold per his spear upgrade, I believe. Yeah, just enough for the spear upgrade, if I'm not mistaken. However, in terms of whether he can get any more, it's going to be quite difficult here, because the truth is that, you know, without undermesh and without additional units besides those limitane, as well as maybe textiles, which he will not have access to, torching down this tower is going to be pretty difficult. So it'll be there to stay for a little while, and that will always be a thorn as long as it's up in LucifroN's economy.
You can see he's pulled the villagers back onto gold. This is purely because he actually needs 35 to get that spearman upgrade. And like you said, getting textiles in this matchup is probably one of the most important things. And honestly, Myriad, I'm so glad we got to see a tower rush, because otherwise I would just have sounded like I have no idea what I'm talking about. And I'm glad we get some standardized tower rushing from CSO himself. Now, we'll see if JD has something to say about this once those first knights get chosen, but he's still a far way off. And now the gold was available for just a bit longer. He instantly goes for textiles, though. Not getting that spearman upgrade.
Yeah, it's quite interesting there from LucifroN. He forgoes the spear upgrade entirely and instead opts for that textiles instead. So he's going to look to make a quick torch on the tower, which could be a very prudent choice, because once Feudal Age is in for CSO, if there has been some stone gathering for CSO, then he can upgrade that tower, make it even harder for LucifroN to take down. However, Akurto is caught, which is a double-edged sword in this case, because it will make the villages much, much tankier here for LucifroN, but it does mean that the damage dealt to the tower is going to be far, far lower. And you can see LucifroN, I think, struggling here a little bit. One villager is, just barely survives there. So beautiful timing there by LucifroN to pull it. And actually, he's going to completely save all of his villagers and take down the tower prematurely here. So beautifully played and timed by LucifroN.
LucifroN also investing in that mercenary house as the first building, just telling us he is going for the berries, and it doesn't matter what you have to say about it. He wants food, and he wants it now. So this is an interesting choice here, because getting your mercenary house in the scenario just means you need to have oil to produce anything. And he doesn't have oil, he doesn't have wood to get another one, so that is why we're seeing him pull them all the way over here. So now he's got a lot in the berries, he's going to try and get as much as possible, but JD is ready. She's edged up as well, and we'll see what he decides to go with. Archer JD, as Byzantines, this gives me nightmares.
Archer JD can be very annoying to deal with. It only takes JD 2 regular arrow shots from her bow, as well as a divine arrow to snipe out a villager, which, you know, you gotta be really, really quick on your feet ahead of time to notice that, which can be quite difficult. But it is a trade-off here for CSO, right? Without melee JD, dealing with the Limitane especially is going to be much more difficult. Without access to the Beyblade maneuver, of course, that JD has access to, which, you know, can do great work up against those Limitanes. They are more impervious to arrow fire thanks to the shield wall than regular spearmen once it does get activated. So it will make micro somewhat a bit easier for CSO, as, you know, JD will be an archer and you can just control her together with the archers, as opposed to if she was melee. Alongside the knights, which, you know, she would slow down the knights if they're in the same control group, for example, so makes the burden of micro slightly harder. But, you know, he would trade off the strength in that fight as a result. As we see, Night Charge comes in on the berries. JD doing a bit of work already here. CSO playing extremely aggressive in this game number 3 here, looking to put as much pressure on LucifroN as possible. Not even opting for the boars in order to get additional experience. And this could be a good choice here, because if he does go very aggressive on LucifroN, it might be enough to get him to slip up a little bit and make some mistakes, which, as we know, at this level, every little advantage counts. So as the mistakes start piling up, LucifroN taking more and more damage, CSO will only get further and further ahead, so LucifroN has to really be on the ball when it comes to this defense. And going for the Javelins will definitely aid him in that regard, as the Javelins, of course, will do great up against the Archer play from CSO, and on top of it, the Javelins, of course, will also do great damage up against the ranged JD as well.
Now, that textile's actually paid off significantly, because we can see these knights, they actually need to focus a little bit harder to get the villagers to go down. JD was not able to snipe out anyone, but you see he noticed I need a little bit of gold for that Limited upgrade. So for now these guys are still in Dark Age while the rest of the game is in Feudal. But we'll see if CSO is actually going to be able to find some damage before that upgrade comes on in. It looks like he is pulling back for now. JD going to be heading another way. And the knights trying to find a little spot to raid in. Now, keeping in mind, there's only 2 knights on the board right now. And a lot of scouts, so we know exactly what is happening behind all of this. A lot of food, which I mean, he's probably very happy about. But villagers again under siege and none going down. 0 villager kills so far.
Yes, LucifroN's micro on this defensive has been stellar so far, doing such a great job of preventing this knight from dealing any damage. So far, obviously it's impressive, but it's not too difficult as of yet in terms of the grand scale of the game, because there has only been that one knight harassing yet. The worst is still yet to come here for LucifroN, because as that deer starts rolling in for CSO and the knight numbers will climb up further and further, it'll become much harder to defend his wood line, the stone, the gold, the berries. There's so many angles of attack here for CSO, so it's going to get very, very tricky here for LucifroN shortly, as well as the small wood lines making it even harder. And LucifroN, recognizing that, quite prudently drops a tower in order to make it much easier to defend those berries. Not only will it provide vision, but also garrison slot in a pinch for those villagers. And LucifroN, he might have to start looking at potentially walls early on as well for this defense, but they are so expensive on this map, Mareka, because, I mean, you have such small wood lines that putting up walls costs so much and only slows you down further. But however, once LucifroN does get in that second batch of javelins, that will really, really help him out, because then he can start one-shotting those archers.
Now, these guys are going to be quite spicy against archers, but the problem is they are so difficult to replace. And what I'm seeing from this whole build of LucifroN is he's making as many Limited as he can, but at the same time he's thinking about castle. I would say this is a responsible castle, because he's making units as much as he can afford. But at the same time, like you mentioned, the woodlines. These bad boys are going to have to move forward. And when you have arranged a JD, she loves a good forward placement of a woodline. Now, the spearmen are in position to spot out these villages, and they are very low. These guys were part of the big fight early on. And then, just as he's raiding at the front, he's raiding at the back as well. And that is exactly what CSO likes to do. He's going to split your army in half, and he's going to force you to respond.
That's what's so difficult about Byzantines in this position, right? And CSO has shown himself to be an exemplary knight control player in his many series so far in Pro Age of Empires 4. So splitting LucifroN's attention, just like you mentioned, Mareka, on different sides, CSO is striking from different angles to distract LucifroN's army. And the difficulty comes as the numbers get bigger and bigger here for CSO. If your army is split as LucifroN, you might find yourself responding inadequately to one side of the map, where one of your defensive armies might end up getting cleaned up as a result, where overall your mass then suffers heavily. And this can be a real danger and sticking point here for LucifroN. Second mercenary batch of javelins is on the way now, so that will be a big help for him here. But the count of knights is also building steadily here for CSO. Archers as well behind this. CSO also getting his economic upgrades in behind this as well. Meanwhile, LucifroN only focusing on his military upgrades for now, knowing that his economy is going to be helped somewhat by the assistance here in terms of strength. So it's not like he's going to be missing out too much without his eco upgrades. And not missing out on the blacksmith upgrades is very important for him as well when it comes to those fights. But the longer this goes, it gets quite a bit more difficult for him up until that mid-game.
The problem is he's also pushed off of this gold just by the sheer pressure of that looming army around him. We see the knights also looking for a little gap. The spearmen have confirmed that this is a pretty safe area for us to stand in, but the berries have been tapped out close to the base, and now the further berry bushes are going to be the target, but also the target of the knights. So again, a very difficult position for Byzantines to be in, because you haven't been able to do that farm transition. He doesn't have a singular farm, which means this is just going to be so hard for him to keep pumping out these javelin throwers. He's got 2 sets of them. But are 2 sets going to be enough to hold this army off, especially when you start to go into these big numbers of archers? Oh, but
Yes.
look at this. Myriad, do
Yeah.
you see what I'm seeing?
This is the danger, right? This is the problem with just having free access to what is essentially all the deer on the map, even more than LucifroN had access to in that first game. There's just so many deer here on Boldlands. I think the only map with more deer in the entirety of AoE 4 is Carmel, if I'm not mistaken. So all this superior food, whereas LucifroN is forced to gather those slow rate berries in order to have access to his javelins, means that behind this, CSO can just sneak an age up like this. And with that upgrade timing, whilst still having matching army numbers, is going to make this hold incredibly difficult for LucifroN.
Yeah, this army running towards you would scare anyone, but he doesn't know yet that this is about to be a Royal Institute Knight army, and when you have 12 knights, that's a pretty solid amount to get upgraded. He's already banked the gold as well. We see that Royal Institute finishing up now, and that's gonna mean the raid is coming in. Royal Bloodlines instantly being clicked up. The Knights also getting upgraded. But this is where LucifroN most likely wants to take a fight before any of these upgrades get to rear their head. Because right now, he's running out of berries. And this is the last bit of food that he has. Aside from these farms, he's just recently added. There's no gold that he has access to right now. But he says, I'ma grab it while I can.
Yes, LucifroN finding himself in a bit of a panic here, not only needing to make more units to survive this castle age timing here from CSO, but also wanting and needing really to get his own age up going behind this, but it's so far away, Whamen. I mean, not only does he have to build the Golden Horn Tower, but then even with Dialecticus to speed up his upgrades, is going to be hard-pressed to get them in time. Numbers are looking pretty decent for him. 12 Javelins, another batch on the way, and 42 Limitane is a pretty thick front line for CSO to get through, even with 26 veteran archers. But, I mean, yeah, LucifroN, as you mentioned, he needs to move out to try to get some semblance of a decent fight going here. But I fear the worst, that it might just be too late.
And with all these villagers constantly migrating to different spots, he's getting a lot of idle time on that eco, so it's just not as simple as, oh, let me move my villagers around and try to get different resources. The problem is as well, he's going to get enough gold for the age up. But what after that? We can see the army is closing in, and we are barely at 600 gold right now. He's gotten the villagers over here on the berries, but they're about to be greeted by some very nasty Limitane. And there's going to be a fight.
Yeah, fight does come in here as the archers start teeing off towards those Limitane. Javelin's doing good damage already, even just in the feudal age here. LucifroN is forcing a fight here while still aging up, so there's always this danger that you find yourself in this situation playing Age of Empires 4 at this level, where you have to keep making feudal units to survive in this situation, but at the same time, eventually you have to age up, or the tech disadvantage will get too severe. As we see Seattle splitting off some knights to start raiding towards that south side, as he does spot the villagers on the berries gathering there for LucifroN. Meanwhile, at the front, he's still taking careful fights here, not overcommitting too much with the knights. The archer count is kept somewhat in check by CSO here, but the Limitane are falling rapidly. You can see the destroy value, and yeah, LucifroN knows GG is scored. CSO takes the series, eliminating LucifroN in Qualifier 2, 3-0.
And this is massive, not just because he took down LucifroN, but he took down LucifroN before he could reach that double elimination stage. Honestly, clean performance here by CSO, truly showing us why Louis and him are practice partners. The Elephant Boys just reigning supreme so far. So, guys, we are done with this short series. They made it very quick, I must say. These two did not leave us waiting too long.